The time right now is 4:10, 4:11 actually, I believe. We're running a little bit behind on these monitors here. Thank you so much for joining me here at the live desk. I am Janae Hancock. I do want to take a look at some national video that we received into our newsroom not too long ago. You can see it here on your screen. You're taking a look at several ceremonies that took place today to commemorate 80 years since D-Day. That's also known as Operation Overlord. 160,000 Allied troops landed on the beaches of Normandy, France. Thousands did not come back, but the invasion led to the defeat of the Nazis and eventually the end of World War II. And that actually brings us to our story today. Again, you are taking a look at those who did survive. We do know that President Joe Biden and First Lady Joe Biden, Dr. Joe Biden, they were also in attendance in France today. And we just learned also that we are going to be getting a speech from President Biden early tomorrow morning. We'll get there here in a bit. But I do want to turn to our guest for today, since this is Behind the Story. We are joined by KCTV5 Betsy Webster. Hey there, Betsy.
Hi there. You caught me while I'm still checking some of my notes
No,
on something that I find is really
fine.
interesting. So I'll answer some of your questions, and then if you have a few more things to say,
Yeah.
I'll look at my phone and try to find
Yeah,
my
no,
notes
that's
on
perfectly fine. So actually this anniversary, this 80th anniversary, brings attention to the state of Kansas, the Sunflower State, because of President Dwight Eisenhower. Now, Betsy has been following this story, and it will be airing a little bit later on KCTV5. But Betsy, I do want to ask you, what role did the president play in such a historic day like today?
Sorry. That was my notes that were audio, and they just started playing. What role did he take? Well, he wasn't president yet at that point. He was General Dwight D. Eisenhower, and his role was planning and coordinating everything. What was known as Operation Overlord, and we call it D-Day. That is the day, and it was the amphibious landing on the beaches of Normandy. He was the supreme commander of the Allied forces for Operation Overlord. So his role was, he was the person in charge of making it happen, and it was quite an operation. It required a lot of planning. I mean, there was more than just an invasion. They actually had a disinformation campaign to try to divert the Nazis' attention in believing that it was going to happen somewhere else, at a different beach area in France. And the weather played a big role. Yeah. So this was a joint operation. It was air, it was ground, it was naval. The conditions of the seas had to be just right for the naval operation and for this amphibious landing. But we also needed certain conditions for the Air Force when they made the first approach with bombings, and famously, he had to delay the invasion by a day because of bad weather. So yeah, of course there were a lot of people at his side. But I think he's been credited at least for being the brainchild and the title, Supreme Commander. That says it all.
Right. And I think there's been a lot of attention on this 80th anniversary today, as it should be. But, we kind of talked about it before this live stream, Betsy. I'm not personally from Kansas City, not from Missouri or Kansas, but I didn't know anything about, President Eisenhower being from here, and let alone this history. So you're bringing a lot of attention to it here today.
Yeah, I think at least in the Kansas City area, when we talk about presidential museums and libraries, and presidents who are from here, we all think Harry Truman.
Yeah.
I mean, it's closer, right? Independence is just down the street. It's right in the metro area. Abilene is about a 2-hour drive from the Kansas City metro, depending on whether you're on the eastern side or the western side of the metro, past Topeka, straight shot on I-70 though. And so maybe that's why people don't think about it that much, but yeah.
I think that definitely plays a huge role in it. Okay, so let's kind of go back to Eisenhower. He designed an attack that was the first of its kind. And you talk a little bit about the weather, but this took years. It was years in the making. Again, we're taking a look at those national ceremonies that took place in France earlier today. A lot of the people, I believe they're in their 90s, close to their hundreds now, but they were attending those ceremonies earlier today.
So you want to talk about the planning?
Yeah.
I mean, somebody who's not super involved in military history, and I can't say that generally I'm one of those people that is super knowledgeable about it, but having covered this, I know a little bit more now. And, you know, we don't think sometimes about what do you need for a military invasion? Let me ask you, what do you need for a military invasion?
A military invasion. See, that's the thing. I wouldn't even know where to start.
Well, obviously,
I would
you
say
need
weapons.
Right, so you need weapons, and that
plan.
is supplies. You need the armed forces, but you need all kinds of other supplies too, right? Food,
Right.
right? You know, this is people, the soldiers and airmen and sailors need to sustain themselves. So they had to build up the number of people. They had to build up the supplies. I have a number here because I did a double checked on it. They had 2 million troops from 12 countries stationed in the United Kingdom before this operation, because this is just the first step of the operation. This continued on, and they had to keep replenishing forces. And in order to get all those supplies in, they actually built portable harbors. Because you can't get enough supplies in with the way things were set up with the beaches. So yeah, it's immense. It's not just people landing on the beaches of Normandy.
And you know, I paused the video on this part because I told you this was what was so unique to me as you did this interview, and we'll touch on who you talked to here in a bit, but they had the physical letter that Eisenhower wrote. Tell us a little bit more about that letter.
Oh, so, well, I'm sure there are plenty of letters there at the Eisenhower Library, a lot of documents there, but this is kind of like a speech more than a letter, a little speech that he wrote by hand that he put in his pocket. He knew there was a lot at stake here.
Right.
In terms of whether the Allied forces were going to win the war, in terms of how many troops would die during this mission. So if this was unsuccessful, he was prepared with that speech. That's what that was that you saw that he would give. And in it, he says that the troops fought valiantly, and any failure is mine alone. Sometimes call it his in case of failure speech.
He was essentially just ready to take the blame because it all kind of fell into his hands. At least he felt like it did. Betsy, I keep touching on what I found to be so unique, but what did you find to be so unique as you did this story?
Well, I think one of the things is how the Presidential Library and Museum and Boyhood Home is laid out. So often, the Presidential Library and Museum, it'll be in the same city as the former president's boyhood home, but it's in a different location. And there's a reason for that. I mean, there isn't space around their boyhood home usually to build the museum and library. With President Truman, his boyhood home is down kind of near the square, and the library and museum is on some more open land elsewhere in Independence. But the thing with President Eisenhower is because he was so significant as a general, his accomplishments were there before he became president. So he had 5 brothers. And when his mother died, his father died first, I think 1941, and then his mother died in, I believe, 1946. His brothers created the Eisenhower Foundation to preserve that childhood home. They wanted to look just like it did when his mother left it. And the boyhood home opened for tours in 1947. Now, that foundation protected not just the home, but the property around it.
Right.
Now, we talk about how he had a modest upbringing. They didn't have a lot of money, but they did have some land. I mean, it wasn't like a big farm. It was, but they had, they grew strawberries and things like that. And he actually, I think it was strawberries. He actually sold strawberries in town in order to earn money to pay for sports. He liked playing football, I think it was, and he and his brothers were all very interested in education. They agreed each to work to pay for the next brother's education.
That's
so they all
unique
became
tradition. I like that.
Yeah, and they all became pretty successful. So so they preserved this. I think it's about 2 acres, between 1 and 2 acres, that area. So then after World War II, first the house opened for tours in 1947, and it was quite an attraction, right? Because he was the general who led Operation Overlord. But they also started to build the museum that's there now. That museum was being built before he became president, again, for General Eisenhower, but it was important to him that it not just be for him, but that it be for everyone involved with the Allied forces in World War II. So it was a war museum, and he became president in 1953, and that museum was dedicated in 1954 on Veterans Day. And then, of course, it wasn't until later that the library was built around it. He and the First Lady and their eldest son were actually buried on that property.
I did
and
know
that
that
was turned into a meditation site where people can go. So it's just really neat that everything's in the same place, and so that's unique, I think.
And it's not too far away. Again, touching on those accomplishments, the first Supreme Commander of NATO and 34th President of the United States. This is actually, there's a new tourist attraction and photo op that will be added. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, of course, if you're going to go through Kansas, you got to find one of the world's largest, right? I think it's in Kansas where they have the world's largest ball of twine. I can't remember if the world's largest rocking chair is also in Kansas, or if it's in Missouri. I worked in Garden City, Kansas, in Southwest Kansas for a while, and you take little road trips. You got to break it up every once in a while. So so already Abilene has the world's largest belt buckle that features Eisenhower. But when he was running for president, he had those buttons, and based on your age, Janae, I'm not sure if you remember them. I actually wasn't alive then either.
Photos.
But my father was a presidential historian, so not a presidential historian, a history professor. So I couldn't escape some of those things, and he was alive at that time. Those buttons that said "I like Ike." Do you know what I'm talking about?
I saw that in your story.
Okay.
So I know what you're talking about because of your story.
So the "I like Ike" slogan buttons, it's just become a calling card of the Eisenhower presidency.
What he's known by.
And it is one of the best-selling things in the gift shop there. So the chamber, the tourism bureau, they have worked to have an artist create I don't know if it's the world's largest "I like Ike" button, but I'm guessing it is.
We're going to say it is.
We're going to go with that.
Because it's in his
because I don't know where else in the world they have a giant "I like Ike" button. But so they're creating that, and they're going to put it in what's called Little Ike Park. And so that's a place where you can take your picture next to the big button. And by button we mean, the pin, the round pin.
I love it. I do want to take a look at our website, kctv5.com. Where can we watch your story, and where can we learn more?
Well, the story is already up on kctv5.com, so you can go there. But you can also see it on the air if you want to see it, I guess, on the big screen of your television instead of on your laptop or computer. You can watch it tonight at 10 o'clock. And to learn more, the story on our website does have some links and hyperlinks. It'll give you the hours for the Eisenhower trying to say it in the right order, library, museum, and boyhood home. You can find all that stuff on there.
Yeah, and we're taking a look at that shot, looking at the statue. Betsy, I want to thank you so much for joining me here at the Live Desk. Definitely check out this story. Betsy did such an amazing job, as well as our former photog, Greg Malota. We have to give him a shout out as well. So thank you so much, Betsy, for joining me here at the Live Desk. I appreciate it.
Thanks.